Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 5th of June. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. I'm Mark Broom. And where else could we start but with the results of yesterday's local elections? All of the 17 major mayoral and provincial races have now been called one way or the other. For a breakdown of all the results, we are going to connect to our Park Ji-won, who is standing by at the news centre. Ji-won, the vote count continued well into the early hours of this morning, but we now have a clear picture of the new political landscape, but it doesn't really look that much different.
Good morning, Mark. Yes, the final results for the 17 heads of local governments show the ruling Saenuri Party was victorious in 8 regions, mainly in its traditional strongholds in the southeast of the country and Korea's mostly heavily populated Gyeonggi-do province. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, won 9 regions, including Seoul and its strongholds regions in the southwest. Breaking down the results by regions, the ruling party fared pretty well in the metropolitan area. Although Seoul was taken by the main opposition, the party won the hotly contested Incheon mayoral seat and Gyeonggi-do province. However, the main opposition party claimed victories in the nation's central regions, the Chungcheongdo provinces, the country's new administrative city of Sejong, and the central city of Daejeon. And considering these regions are traditionally moderate conservative, the main opposition party will be buoyed by the strong showing. And turning to the southwest and southeast regions, although the regions like Liberals' power-based Gwangju and the southern port city of Busan had seen some strong performances by rival party candidates or independent candidates, the regions didn't veer from their traditional preferences. So we can say that both parties achieved half victories according to regions.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, Ji-won. And some regions garnered extra attention in the run-up to this election due to their political importance, like Seoul, or due to the fact that they'd be very hotly contested areas. Tell us more about that.
Sure. As for Seoul, incumbent Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon from the main opposition party easily beat his ruling party rival, billionaire politician Chung Mong-jun. Park's victory comes in the wake of the deadly ferry disaster last month. So let's listen to what the competing candidates had to say after the confirmation of the results.
This is a victory of all citizens who called for a fundamental change following the Seoul ferry disaster. It's a victory for all citizens who work honestly. Now I will silently work towards a new era.
I want to thank the citizens of Seoul. I humbly accept the choice of the people. I hope Mayor-elect Park will newly lead Seoul City by taking on the difficult situation facing the city.
And Ji-won, we saw some very tight races in Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces. These were, in fact, the last 2 provinces to confirm their results.
Yes, in Gyeonggi-do province, the ruling party's Nam Kyung-pil edged to victory against his rival Kim Jin-pyo by less than 1 percentage point. And Korea's eastern Gangwon-do province, incumbent Governor Choi Mun-soon also scored a tight win, the gap there less than 2 percentage points.
Yeah, very tight races there. Now, it wasn't just politicians in the running. The public also had to vote for their regional education chiefs as well. Break down those results for us.
Yes, Mark. 17 education chiefs, 1 for each region, were also elected. And quite surprisingly, 13 out of the 17 winners can be considered progressive in their political leaning. For example, Seoul's new education superintendent Jo Hee-yeon, a liberal professor, beat 2 other strong conservative candidates. Well, some pundits did say that the result reflects the anger of voters in their 40s, the generation who felt the most grief due to the Seoul ferry accident, in which so many teenage students lost their lives. And analysts say it was a push to change Korea's educational system.
Okay, thank you very much, Ji-won, for your report. That was our Park Ji-won reporting on the election results from our news centre. Now, the turnout for Wednesday's local elections was the highest since the first local elections were held all the way back in 1995. The National Election Commission attributed this to the adoption of an early voting system, and voter turnout, however, still fell short of the expected 60%. Yulian reports.
A total of 56.8% of eligible voters took part in this local election, making it the second highest participation rate in the past 5 local elections. Breaking it down by the most contested regions, Gangwon-do, Chungcheongbuk-do, and Chungcheongnam-do saw a relatively high voter turnout ranging from 55 to 62%. Cities of Daejeon and Busan was at 54 and 55.6% respectively. In the capital region, Incheon and the populous Gyeonggi-do province saw turnouts fall on the lower side, both at around 53%, while in the capital city of Seoul, it was just above the average at 58.6%.
The voter turnout increased because of the early voting system that allowed people to vote anywhere, regardless of their home address.
The early voting system was adopted for the first time ever last week, and it saw a higher than expected voter turnout of 11.5%. Kim says many people took advantage of the early voting system so they could plan trips on election day. But the 56.8% voter turnout still fell short of the widely anticipated 60% rate. Some pundits had predicted the Seoul affair disaster to pull up voter participation rates given recent anti-government sentiment, but it seems it has only worked to turn voters away from politics. Yurian, Arirang News.
Staying with the elections, and the ruling Saenuri Party is breathing a sigh of relief on this Thursday as, all things considered, it came out of these elections relatively unscathed. Prior to the vote, the elections were being billed as a referendum on the government's poor handling of last month's Seoul ferry disaster. Even against this backdrop, the main opposition party couldn't score a clear victory. Ji Myung-gil has more.
In the wake of last month's Seoul ferry disaster, this year's local elections were seen as a referendum on the Park Geun-hye's administration. In the lead-up to these elections, her government had been sharply criticized for its poor handling of the tragedy. Political analysts had expected that the ruling Saenuri Party would be defeated by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy in the lower-level administrative and legislative posts. However, the election results showed that the ruling party won against the lower-level local government positions. Therefore, President Park is expected to gain the momentum necessary to proceed with her political and economic reforms for the rest of her term in office. Also, in an attempt to win back public confidence, the presidential office of Cheongwa-dae will likely carry out a wide-ranging reshuffle of the cabinet and other top-level officials. However, President Park is also facing the tricky challenge of finding a suitable candidate for the vacant prime minister position, raising worries over a further delay in her state reform drive. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
That a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now, in the rest of the day's news, South Korea has once again stated that it's not considering adopting a US-designed missile defense system. Seoul's defense ministry on Wednesday made it clear that there have not been any consultations between Seoul and Washington on this issue. The denial comes after the commander of US troops in South Korea this week said that he had proposed deploying an advanced missile defense system to the country to counter the growing threat posed by North Korea. The so-called THAAD missile defense system can strike down medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles in mid-air. The ministry said the South Korean military is developing its own low-altitude missile defenses, and these can effectively intercept North Korean missiles. The European Union says it's deeply concerned about North Korea's threat of a new nuclear test. The statement came out of a meeting of the UN International Atomic Energy Agency on Wednesday. The EU also said Pyongyang may be enhancing its nuclear ability. This comes as North Korea is seen, through satellite imagery at least, to have stepped up activity at its main test site. North Korea threatened to conduct a fourth nuclear test earlier this year to counter what it called US provocations in Asia. And staying with North Korea, there has been a flurry of diplomatic activity in recent days and weeks to restart the long-stalled multinational talks on North Korea's denuclearization. South Korea and the US want China to play a stronger role in bringing Pyongyang back to the negotiating table. Our Hwang Sang-yi sat down with Joel Witt. Mr. Witt is a former US State Department official, and he gave his expert view on China's role in regards to this issue.
So I think there are limits to how far China will go. And I think we need to take it upon ourselves to figure out how to solve this problem. We can't rely on China. And particularly speaking as an American, US-Chinese relations, as you know, are not so great at the moment. It's hard for me to comprehend how we can think that China is going to solve this problem for us when our bilateral relationship is not so good. It doesn't make any sense.
How can we solve perhaps this North Korea issue without China?
I think Washington and South Korea should basically inform China that we don't see much hope for resuming the six-party talks. We understand that there are limits to what China can do, and therefore the United States and South Korea are going to approach North Korea directly, and will keep China informed, but they won't be the middleman anymore.
Do you think the format of the six-party talks has perhaps passed its expiry date? Do we need a new format?
You know, I think that so much time has passed since the six-party talks have been held that it may be worthwhile, rather than clinging to the past, that we do a total review of where we are, where we're going, and how do we avoid the consequences of a North Korea with a growing stockpile of nuclear weapons. So it may be, we should reconsider whether the six-party talks are worthwhile as a forum for future dialogue.
That was our Hwang Sang-yi reporting there. Now, South Korea has reached an agreement with China to boost their bilateral ties. The two countries' finance ministers vowed to strengthen cooperation within international organizations. Seoul's Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok shook hands on the deal Wednesday with China's Finance Minister Lo Ji-wei in Beijing. The two finance ministers said their enhanced bilateral cooperation will first be seen at the APEC meetings and then at the ASEAN Plus 3 meetings. Beijing is set to hold the APEC finance ministers meeting this coming October. Now, the authorities in mainland China did a solid job silencing the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre on Wednesday. The only commemoration, a massive vigil, took place in Hong Kong. Connie Lee has more.
A massive candlelight vigil lit up the night sky Wednesday night in a downtown park in Hong Kong. Tens of thousands of people remembered the bloody crackdown on democracy in Beijing's Tiananmen Square exactly 25 years ago in 1989. The demonstrators, including many who flew in from mainland China, called on Beijing to admit to the killings and account for what happened.
This is my first time participating in this sort of large-scale political event. I hope one day in China, citizens will truly have the freedom to demonstrate.
Although the former British colony, Hong Kong, has been under Chinese rule since 1997, it still enjoys civil liberties not allowed in mainland China today. Leading up to the anniversary, the Chinese government cracked down heavily on any mention of the massacre, prohibiting public discussion and censoring online references.
This is, of course, the 25th anniversary of Tiananmen Square crackdown. And what we've seen this year is an intensification of the crackdown against all sorts of people in civil society. And it's really wide in scope. It's not just confined to Beijing, it's nationwide.
In Beijing, dozens of activists were detained for attempting to commemorate the anniversary, and tourists and journalists in Tiananmen Square were searched. It was back in 1989, on June 4th, when hundreds of pro-democracy activists were removed by force and killed for protesting in the busy city square. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the other international headlines we're following at this hour. For that, we connect to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark.
Now, in the Middle East, the results of Syria's presidential elections are already out.
That's right, and they were released earlier this morning. No big surprises here. President Bashar al-Assad secured his third 7-year term as the leader of the war-ridden nation. Syria's parliamentary speaker Mohammed al-Laham announced Assad garnered 88.7% of the votes cast, only in regime-controlled parts of the country. A 3-year civil war rages on against his rule. A network of the opposition, the local coordination committees in Syria, said at least 24 people were killed in election day violence. Al-Assad urged his supporters not to shoot into the air in joy and enthusiasm to honor the troops fighting on the battlefield. The Taliban has released a video that it says shows the moments of its handover of U.S. Sergeant Bo Bergdahl to U.S. forces in eastern Afghanistan near the Pakistani border. The video shows America's last prisoner of war dressed in Afghan garb seated in a pickup truck, looking slightly disoriented and dazed as armed men spoke to him. Then a Black Hawk helicopter descends as Taliban fighters move toward it, holding a white flag, before U.S. forces take the soldier, patting him down before quickly leaving the meeting point. The circumstances of Bergdahl's capture in 2009 is unclear, though the Pentagon has concluded he had left his Afghan post without authorization. The swap deal that exchanged the POW for 5 senior Taliban figures is coming under increasing criticism in the U.S. World leaders will continue their 2-day summit of G7 nations later today in Brussels. Wednesday evening, during the opening dinner, they put their heads together to find an exit out of the crisis in Ukraine. In a joint statement, they declared their unity in condemning Russia's intervention in Ukraine and said they stand ready with more targeted economic sanctions should Russia not show a cooperative spirit. Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama met with Ukraine's President-elect Petro Poroshenko and declared him a wise choice to lead the country, also pledging military support for the country nearing bankruptcy. And Germany has opened an investigation into America's alleged phone tapping of head of state Chancellor Angela Merkel. The Office of Germany's chief prosecutor said it will pursue a probe into persons unknown in regards to Merkel's cell phone, saying extensive preliminary investigations had established sufficient factual evidence. The move could further cool relations between the two states that had already grown apart upon the revelation. Chancellor Merkel had criticized the U.S. of a grave breach of trust, prompting U.S. President Barack Obama to pledge he would not allow the NSA to damage relations with its allies in the future.
And good morning to you all as we kick things off in figure skating, where after nearly 4 months since the 2014 Sochi Winter Games, the controversy over Kim Yeon-ha's silver medal has finally come to an end. And despite many of Kim Yeon-ha's fans knowing it was a long shot, the complaint filed to the International Skating Union in regards to the free skating scoring was dismissed by the ISU. They stated that the scene where Adelina Sotnikova was seen hugging one of the judges after the competition was a natural act of congratulating the athlete and nothing else. They added that there's no clear evidence that the scoring was biased. Of course, Kim Yeon-ha's silver medal finish led to an outcry amongst the fans and even the experts of the sport, even leading to petitions worldwide. And now moving over to the LPGA this time, where despite Park In-bi's fall from the top of the ranking in the LPGA, Korean golf fans are looking forward to this week when they might see history being made if Lydia Ko wins the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic. The 17-year-old Korean New Zealand golfer, who's currently ranked 3rd in the LPGA ranking, can claim the top ranking if she wins the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic, and Stacey Lewis finishes lower than 7th. If she does achieve this, she will become the youngest LPGA golfer to be ranked number 1. And now moving over to football, where the South Korean national football team, who's currently training over in Miami, are facing a huge setback in their condition training after a few players got sick. According to the report, star midfielder Ki Sung-young as well as Lee Bum-young failed to report to their training due to a cold that they caught after arriving in Miami. And it seems like the virus is spreading around the team as other players were seen sitting out after their passing drills. Meanwhile, the team looked to get back to 100% quickly before facing off against Ghana next week. And now finishing things off with some Wednesday night's KBO action, the Samsung Lions continue their winning ways, beating the Kia Tigers 14-5, with the NC Dinos crushing the Nexen Heroes 20-3. Meanwhile, the Lotte Giants and the Hanwha Eagles were rained out last night. So with that, let's take a look at the highlights between the Doosan Bears and the SK Wyverns. And of course, going into the game here, first inning, man on third, Kim Hyun-soo grounds one to first. The play at the plate, safe, and it's 1-0 Doosan. Second inning, Yang Yi-ji at bat and deep to left center field here, no doubt about it, 2-0 Doosan Bears. Third inning this time, Hong Sang-hin, and he singles to left. This scores Kim Hyun-soo, and it's now 3-0. But in the bottom of the inning, Na Ju-hwan sends this one to left field, and there it goes, back. Gone, a solo shot, cuts the deficit to 3-1. Fourth inning of the game, man on second, Chung Soo-bin, holy cow, his second of the season, and the Doosan Bears have a 5-1 lead. Fast forward to the bottom of the ninth with Doosan up 7-5. Bases loaded, nobody out. Kim Gang-min drills his ball to straightaway center field. One man scores, two man scores, and the play at the plate here, and he is safe. Ball game over. The SK Wyverns win it 8-7. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your weather updates. Well, today's forecast calls for a mix of sun, clouds, and rain. Well, rain is still falling over regions in the east. 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation is expected throughout the day. So due to clouds and rain, temperatures will stay on the cool side. Highs will hover in the low 20s in the east regions, while the capital area will see top temperatures reaching to mid-20s, which is a couple of degrees lower than yesterday. But it seems like we won't get much relief from the heat, as the highs will soar to 30 degrees Celsius tomorrow. So tomorrow, Memorial Day, is going to be a hot one, and temperatures will continue to stay on the warm side throughout the weekend. So please do keep that in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in the capital will rise to 26, while Daegu tops out at 22, and Gwangju and Busan should climb to 24 and 20 later on. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju should see a high of 23. Daejeon and Dokdo will reach 25 and 19, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 14. Well, that's all for me at this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after noon.
Thank you very much, Jion. That's all we have for now, but we will be back at noon Korea time with more reaction to the local election results. Until then, goodbye.